Good morning. This is Jim Ray with the Road to the Autry Masters, talking about the Masters in the American West. This morning, we are pleased to be here with Dave LaMure. Dave is a sculptor in Kimberley, Idaho, does some very innovative sculpture, and we're very happy to have him here with us. Dave, welcome to the Road to the Autry Masters.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, this is an honor.
So Dave is featured not only in the Masters of the American West, but he's also in the Briscoe's Night of Artists, which happens at the Briscoe Museum in San Antonio. He's got one or more pieces in a traveling exhibition right now that's being hosted by the Society of Animal Artists. And I believe, Dave, that you're going to be the recipient of the Stanley Blayfield Award from the National Sculpture Society. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, correct. That award happens in June, and it'll be awarded in New York. And so I'm actually going to fly out there to receive the award, my wife and I.
Great.
Which is wonderful.
NSS is a wonderful organization. We've got a number of nationally recognized NSS sculptors in our ranks at the Masters, and we're glad to add you. This is going to be Dave's first year at the Masters of the American West, so congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. Yeah.
So, Dave, the place that I like to start with this is to get a little bit of idea about your background. So, why don't you talk with us for a moment about your artistic upbringing, how you got developed as an artist, and to the level that you're operating at now.
Well, Jim, I guess as an artist, or to create that type of a mindset, I was always very imaginative. And in school, I would imagine things, and a lot of times in school, I would get called out on it, like, "Hey, where are you? What are you doing?" And
what are you doing?
yeah. And so I wasn't very good at school, even though I got a 4-year degree in business management. And that was tough. That I spent a lot more time in the art studio, the ceramic studio, figure drawing, things like that. And I enjoyed that. That was timeless. But when I was doing accounting, that was not timeless at all. So that gives you a little background on me just personally. And that I don't know where that actually comes from. That's innate, nurture, nature. But essentially, I did like to daydream a lot, or I like to just play with things quietly. And my uncle, I had 6 brothers and sisters, and my uncle, when I was about 11 years old, he was somewhat the avant-garde uncle, Uncle Tom. He's still living. He lives in Sequim, Washington. And he brought all of us 6 kids bags of clay, and we sat at the dining room table, and my parents didn't want us to follow his lead because they thought he was the avant-garde uncle who, they weren't really sure. He always taught us poems and things that
I think we call those black sheep.
The black sheep, exactly. But he was very artistic and very creative, and always had an incredible sense of humor and everything else. So I loved him as a kid. And when I was 11, he brought a bag of clay, and we went to work sculpting. And I sculpted an owl and put a wizard cap on this owl. And so it's amazing, Jim, how poignant that is. Being that now, 50 years later, I feel like the wisdom and nature are my inspirations, and those two things, went together. That I had this wizard cap on an owl when I was 11 years old, and so I just recognized that in the last 5 or 6 years. It was like, oh my goodness, that's incredible to have that come into me and realize that was really profound. And so Uncle Tom, he started us kids, and I was the one that really enjoyed it and took to it and just was enamored with it and lost in clay. And so my parents took me down to a local museum. I lived in Roswell, New Mexico at the time. And I went down to this local museum, the Roswell Museum. They had a little clay studio in the back of the museum. And I was able to take classes from when I was about 12 years old and just became captivated with it. There was a little woman and she was working on the wheel and she threw this huge bowl and the centrifugal force was holding the bowl up. And when the wheel stopped, the bowl collapsed. And I just, that really affected me in a way that I was just like, I want to do that. And I want to do it where, it's successful all the way through to the end. So, that was the spark, and from there, wherever I went away to a boarding school in Colorado, Canyon City, Colorado, and then I went to New Mexico Military Institute, graduated from there. But wherever I was at, and if they had any clay program or clay studio, I was there and spent most of my time there. And the exciting thing about that was there were other creative people. And you had free reign. You got to do whatever you want, and that it was somewhat timeless when their studio was open in different settings.
So were you pretty much self-taught? Did you have any artistic mentors?
I was self-taught when I was younger, but as far as college, there were a lot of people in master's programs in the clay studio.
Okay, so you
and I took classes. I actually just missed a minor in art because I had a struggle with the design teacher in college, and we just didn't get along. And so I did get a degree in business management, and just missed an art minor. So, but I spent more time, and I had people that were getting their masters in fine art, and we collaborated a lot, especially in the ceramic studio where I like to alter large pieces. And so people would always come to me and say, how do you do that? So,
yeah. So you mentioned New Mexico Military Institute. Did you by chance know George Hallmark when he was there?
No, I did not.
So you know George because he's in the Briscoe show with you, and he's a Masters alumni. He's been in the Masters in the past, and I think if you look closely, he to this day wears an NMMI lapel pin on his jacket wherever he goes. He's a big supporter of that. So you guys ought to touch base on that the next time you see each other.
Oh, I would love to. I mean, that was a fascinating experience. I wouldn't change it for the world. It was challenging, and a lot of kids that were sent there because it was challenging. But boy, that was a solidifying time in my life.
Yeah.
Just going through that experience.
Okay. So you learned your craft. You got very good and very innovative at your craft. What was it like what was the process that got you up to where you're exhibiting in some of the top Western art shows in the country?
Well, Jim, as an artist, I really felt like I didn't want to be a part of any kind of organization. And so for years I did clay work, and I was proficient at sculpture and painting, two-dimensional, and I do all three still. But I wanted to create something with a combination of all of those mediums and practices. So I really worked at that from just a standpoint of clay and doing original work. And I continued to sell this original work. And finally, somebody said, in order to have any kind of success or recognition or longevity, you need to pay attention to these different organizations like the National Sculpture Society and the Society of Animal Artists and these shows. And so that was Michael Duchemin, and he said, Dave, your work is really credible and great work. And it's unique. So work towards becoming a member of some of these things. And I said, well, I'm an artist. I don't want to be a member of anything. That's the individuality.
Sounds like a typical artist to me.
Exactly. So I just about missed that whole boat. But so essentially I started applying to different shows and, and applying to different societies. And it was interesting because Wes, who is he's the director of the Society of Animal Artists. He said, Dave, I worked at this for quite a while to get in, but we're the first application you put in, we're accepting you. So I was honored with that. And really, Jim, for me, it was like a real surprise because I don't know what other people see, but so I don't cue off of that. I just work from my own vision and standpoint, and to eventually work towards becoming a part of these societies and different places. I was floored, really, quite honestly, that I was like, wow. So, but now that I evaluate that and I evaluate other work, I feel like, okay, my work is absolutely credible and deserves to be where it's at. So I came to it later in life, and some of that, Jim, also has to do with being a potter. And I started as a potter, but I always was interested in just art as a whole, and moving out of that realm, because there's sort of that society of ceramicists or potters that they generally never move outside of that. And I was really intrigued and knew how to do so many different things. So combining those was really important for me to keep risking and changing and growing. And I love three-dimensional sculpture outside of doing it on a vessel or bas relief. So I love doing that, but I feel like that's something that has been done. So I wanted to do something different. And
okay. So let's talk a little bit about your current work that you're working on for the Masters, the upcoming Masters show. And it is very innovative. You've got a couple of pieces that are, you can actually see an example of one style off to the left-hand side of the screen over Dave's shoulder. And it's a what was originally a clay pot that has now been bronzed, that has animal figures on in a bas relief layout on top of the pot. And the first one that you're doing for us is the Nine Muses. Talk a little bit about that piece, Dave.
So the Nine Muses, this combination, and it's a combination being symbiotic, pliable, malleable. So these horses, the Nine Muses, we all have these muses, I feel like, in our life in different realms, even whatever you do, whatever form you take. I feel like accounting can be creative. You're in different realms. You have your muses. So I had the horse. I broke horses when I was a kid. I felt like I was at ease on a horse. Things came to me that out of nowhere when I was relaxed riding. So that was the inspiration from this piece. And I live on 25 acres and we have horses all around us. We had horses on our place for a while, but they're a lot of work too. So I felt as if this grounding to who we are and where we come from is emulated in this piece, Nine Muses, because the horse is grounded with the elongation of the legs. And I do that in a way that I'm working to and realizing that I'm creating relationships. We're all in relationships. And so to create this relationship of almost symbiosis. There's a vessel, and it's got these horses on it, and these horses are inlaid, or it's bas relief. So I actually use the vessel, and that the horses are the vessel is pliable, so it's still flexible and malleable and pliable, and I create this almost relationship between the horse and the vessel, and that creates a whole subconscious or conscious view of this piece, where you realize that there's connection. And so for me, the importance is we're all here. The importance is connection in what we do, where we find that. And for me, I've found it a lot with just nature. And the horse was here too, 11,000 years ago. So some people say, well, the horse isn't native. Well, what's native, to our place? And so that also has this symbiosis. A lot of the Great Plains were established because of the horse and the way it grazed, but then it was gone for about 11,000 years. So there's a big story in that, but the story is that each of us have this potentiality of relationship, and I use the vessel as a metaphor for myself. We're all vessels. We all have this internal and external part of us. And what's on the inside is really, I feel like, what's going to be most valuable and important, not what comes from the outside or what's on the outside. It's what we manifest from the inside. So that was a sense of Nine Muses.
Okay.
And
you're working on, or you've worked on a second vessel, Sonoran Serenade. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that vessel, Sonoran Serenade, is there again, relationship, Jim, symbiosis, a malleable, pliable sense of this piece. And there's a chuckwalla lizard, and the chuckwalla lizard is also inlaid into this vessel in a very malleable, pliable way, where it has this relationship with the ground that it stands on. There's a lid that has 3 roadrunner skulls. Well, I found a roadrunner skull down in the deserts of Arizona, and I'd been seeing roadrunners, and I grew up around roadrunners, and I know they're just tenacious predators for as big as they are. So, and they'll eat a rattlesnake. They're incredible, and kill and eat a rattlesnake. So I just got to thinking about the ecology of the desert and the balance of that ecology, and it's so fragile, and it's almost a more heartfelt relationship because of how sparse and scarce and dry and difficult that environment is. So the essence is this Sonoran Serenade, how the desert continues on, how the roadrunner continues on, and the chuckwalla. The chuckwalla was a lizard also that indigenous people in the desert used to. They're the second largest lizard in the United States, and they go into crevices and they'll blow up with air to protect themselves. And indigenous people would stick a stick in and pop them and pull them out, and they were food, in a really sparse environment. So this skull that I found in the desert, a roadrunner skull, I just wondered and imagined how many chuckwalla lizards survived because this roadrunner died. So the balance there.
Okay.
That piece.
So the third piece is an original piece. It's not one of your pots. It's Buffalo Bones. Is that what it's called?
Buffalo Bones. Yes.
Tell us about that.
So I've been intrigued with the buffalo and the plight of the buffalo and how long the buffalo was on this continent. continent and how many buffalo were on the continent. So it's just an intriguing beast on so many different levels, and the balance it achieved, and what happened to it, the plight of the buffalo. In St. Louis, at St. Louis Carbon Works, they had in the late 1800s 125 million buffalo skeletons go through there. They paid $28 million in the late 1800s because people were collecting buffalo bones on the prairie, and in some places it looked like snow. But there were also buffalo jumps in Canada that they were 30 feet high, full of carcasses. And so there was an incredible event that occurred. And so that event, I love to pay attention to and recognize. So these bones are porcelain bones, and they're inside the vessel. So I feel like that's where the richness comes from. It's the inside, and it comes from the inside out. So I'm expressing this in this story. And the story is so phenomenal because there may have been 40 million buffalo on this continent at one time, but there were never 125 million, which was the amount of bones that were collected. But so there's a story in this, being that we started hunting with stone as humans about 2.6 million years ago. About 10,000 years ago was the first signs of agriculture that we have scant evidence of from archaeology. So this is all an archaeological standpoint. So what that means, Jim, is that 996% of our time in that 2.6 million years, we as nomadic hunter-gatherers use stone to procure animals and food. 0.004% of that time, we started the first inklings of agriculture. So this piece, buffalo bones, is essentially a piece for compassion of our species, where we're at in this timeline. It's fascinating to me that we are from an evolutionary and a timeline scale, we've done incredible things in 100 years. So that's the expression of this piece, Buffalo Bones. It's a timeline. It's about compassion for our species. It's about the unknown. We don't know. And if we look at some things that we know from science and archaeology and a timeline, we have no percentage of our timeline we can calculate as far as where we're at now and how quickly we've evolved. And so that evolution is really expressed in the buffalo gun and the buffalo gun coming, because there was a balance for probably thousands and thousands of years on this continent of the population of buffalo. That changed with technology. So with that, it's going to take compassion, courage, and essentially, it's not a judgment. It's just a essence of the unknown.
Yeah.
And where we're at. So it's a very emotional piece when you look at it from a standpoint of whoa, yeah. And it's just a minuscule timeline, and we deserve to be compassionate with one another in this place that we're at.
So what is the genesis of your artistic inspiration when you think about creating a new work? How does that process work? And we've only got a couple of minutes left here, but share with us how your inspiration turns into an idea for a work.
So for the most part, Jim, it is just being available to not control or judge or push something. With this buffalo bones, I love to collect bones. I love to imagine as a touchstone what they mean. Same thing with the Roadrunner skull. And so essentially, for me, it is nature. It is the connection here, the belonging, the symbiosis. Where is there symbiosis? Where do I find symbiosis, or just remain open to symbiosis? And within that, I like to create work, and I do like to create all types of work, from three-dimensional wildlife sculptures, but for the most part, it is wilderness, wildlife, nature, and then just remaining open, not trying to control that process. And a lot of times it doesn't work, Jim.
Yeah.
My
Well,
imagination is beyond.
I think that's the case with all artists, is they have an idea and a conception, and they try to execute it to the best of their abilities. And sometimes it turns out to be a home run. Sometimes it's either a strikeout or a single. So you know, that's the creative process, I guess. Speaking of process, over the course of your professional career, has your process, tell us how your process has evolved.
My process has evolved in a way that I really look for the connection, that, like I was talking about, the symbiosis, the wisdom of nature. And so I'm solidified in that, in a sense that I feel like, even when I talk about the buffalo bones, a timeline. So the timeline of nature and wild things, and we are nature, you know, and that's part of my evolution. Is I want to continue to express that we are nature, and for people to feel that when they see my work, whatever work it is, and a closer connection to that in a way. So that's the evolution, but the evolution will continue to be this openness to what is that connection to nature and the symbiosis of that.
Right.
Even people talk about sustainability, and I feel like sustainability is sort of a forced thing, like we're white knuckling to stay sustainable. I feel like I want to introduce another word, and that is symbiotic. We deserve to be symbiotic with what's going on, because really that's what's going to last. That's what's going to.
And it is a symbiotic relationship.
Yes.
Well, Dave,
yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us and spending a little bit of time with us. We hope that we see you at the Masters in February, and thank you so much for joining us.
I'll be there, Jim, and thanks for the invitation. Yeah, this has been great. So
we'll look forward to it.